First of all, I'd like to thank the folks here at the Graves Library and the PORTSIDE Readers for inviting me back again. And I'd like to thank all of you out there watching for watching. I wanted to do some memoir today, some memorable memoir, but try as I might, I couldn't sound like Richard Nixon, Michelle Obama, or Katharine Hepburn, so I decided to read something by someone whose voice I can imitate, and that's mine. These are 3 bits of memory that were originally published in 2009, 2008, and 2018, respectively. And the first one is called The Making and Unmaking of an Almost Vegetarian. 3 decades ago, I decided to become a vegetarian. Some noble and upright people make this sort of lifestyle change for nutritional reasons. Others cite the golden rule as motivation, reasoning that if they themselves don't wish to be slaughtered for food, they shouldn't subject other living creatures to similar treatment. My decision had little to do with health or conscience. I opted to give up red meat because I wanted to save money. In early 1981, I was spending as much as $2 a week on hamburger meat. Then one night I was balancing my extremely slender checkbook when I had a veg epiphany. The ground chuck I was using to augment the generic spaghetti sauce I poured over my nightly pasta was a luxury I could do without. No confirmed vegetarians I knew at the time openly discouraged me from attempting to join their ranks, but most were skeptical that I had what it took to truly become one of them. My sister, who adhered to a diet completely free of meat, fish, and various other things that used to be alive, explained that I wouldn't be an actual vegetarian unless I renounced all dead flesh. And sentiment made me unwilling to give up eating turkey at our grandparents' annual Thanksgiving Day feast. Plus, I had also vowed not to obsessively comb through my egg roll looking for vestiges of pork on those rare occasions when I treated myself to Chinese food. I didn't want recognition for my altering my eating habits. I just wanted to change them. Another potential problem my doubting Thomas friends saw with my ambition was with what I actually would eat. For one thing, I detest cheese in nearly all of its forms. "Where do you plan on getting your protein?" was a typical reaction from disbelieving individuals who questioned my resolve. Looking back, I have no clue where my protein came from, since all I was eating was rice with vegetables, spaghetti with vegetables, ramen noodles with vegetables, and occasionally vegetables with other vegetables. However, since I spent most of what turned out to be 12 pasta with veggies years playing for every softball, soccer, basketball, ice hockey, or street hockey team that would have me when I wasn't running 5-mile road races at a sub 6-minute per mile clip, in retrospect, it would seem that my meat-free existence didn't have any terribly adverse effects on my health. I vividly remember the night my vegetarian phase crashed to a halt. I had been assigned to represent the high school where I had served as boys varsity basketball coach at the postseason Referees Association banquet. There, I was to accept the league's sportsmanship trophy we had earned for behaving ourselves while losing 17 of our 20 games that winter. Before leaving for the event, I gave myself a thorough once-over in the mirror. My then plentiful hair was neatly combed, and I looked resplendent in my one and only suit and tie. I figured I'd be drawing plenty of attention from all the attractive young ladies I imagined I'd meet there. Except that when I arrived at the restaurant, the only women present were a couple of coaches' wives who appeared as though they'd been sentenced to attend, and 4 sturdy-looking waitresses who looked like they'd been working there since the end of World War II. It was clear that the Referees Association banquet was going to be a testosterone fest. At a table full of basketball coaches I didn't know, I liberally peppered my speech with coarse and imaginative expletives, regaling my burly colleagues with basketball-related tales. I knew they were impressed by the enthusiasm of their snorts and grunts. Suddenly, a waitress thumped me on the shoulder and growled, "How'd you like your steak cooked?" Shrewdly deducing that revealing my vegetarianism to my macho companions at that moment wouldn't do, I cravenly squeaked, "Medium well." The steak smelled great. It tasted okay, too, although it subsequently sat in my stomach like an anchor for about 3 days before finally leaving. Reintroducing one's digestive system to beef after a 12-year hiatus from it is even tougher than it sounds. It's hard finding a dining regimen where one is totally satisfied, but after decades of experimentation, I have finally arrived at the perfect place. These days, I eat whatever the person making dinner puts in front of me, unless it's got cheese in it. All right, so now we know that my vegetarian days are over, but my learning days are not. And in fact, this next essay is called The Name's the Same, and it was published originally on April 15th, 2008. Skilled instructors, caring parents, and good friends all played major roles in my education, but it's likely that prior to turning 10 years old, I learned more from my baseball cards than I did from my parents, teachers, and peers combined. Reading those 2-inch by 3-inch rectangles helped boost my literacy skills. My math abilities multiplied, see what I did there, from figuring batting averages from the statistics listed on the back of those cards. I also learned an unusual life lesson thanks to my collection. It was shortly after Thanksgiving in 1966 when my beloved New York Mets acquired outfielder Tommy Davis in a trade with the Los Angeles Dodgers. That night at dinner, I enthusiastically relayed the news to my grandfather, who was our family's resident baseball fan. Since the Mets had just completed a season that had seen them finish 9th in a 10-team league, Grandpa was significantly less excited than I was. In an attempt to convince him of Tommy Davis's value and armed with knowledge gleaned from 3 years' worth of baseball cards, I informed him that the newest Met was a 2-time National League Most Valuable Player who had rapped out 230 hits and driven in 153 runs in 1962. He also owned an impressive .304 lifetime batting average and had helped the Dodgers get into 3 of the 4 previous World Series. Then I added an important fact that I had figured out myself, which was that Davis was such a superb athlete that in his spare time, he punted and place-kicked for the San Francisco 49ers of the National Football League. How did I know this? Well, like any knowledgeable 9-year-old sports fan, I watched the occasional football game on TV, and one afternoon when the 49ers were lining up a field goal try, the announcer reported that it was Tommy Davis who was making the attempt. That was how I knew what a unique talent Tommy Davis was. My grandfather expressed some uncertainty regarding that particular claim, but I dismissed his doubts as the sour skepticism of an old man who was just mad that a kid more than 70 years his junior knew more about sports than he did. Grandpa even went so far as to suggest that Tommy Davis, who kicked for the 49ers, might be an altogether different fellow than the one I was so fired up over. I tuned him out immediately. Who ever heard of 2 different people with the same name? I mentioned the incident to one of my friends in school the next day, expecting that he'd join me in scoffing at my grandfather's ignorance. However, not only did my friend not laugh at Grandpa's foolish claim, he agreed with him. Soon we were arguing as loudly and bitterly as 2 fourth-grade know-it-alls can. Finally, in exasperation, he challenged me to bring a photo of Tommy Davis to school the next day. The following morning, I arrived at school with Tommy Davis's baseball card tucked securely inside my lunchbox. When I saw my friend on the playground, he asked me to show him the card, which I did. He then opened his own lunchbox and produced a football card of Tommy Davis of the 49ers, and I was aghast. My Tommy Davis was clearly of African-American descent, and it was equally plain his Tommy Davis was not. At least I learned from my mistake. Later that fall, my grandfather and I were watching a televised National Football League game when the announcer mentioned the name Chuck Hinton. I quickly informed Grandpa that the fellow who had just made the tackle for the Pittsburgh Steelers, was actually not the same guy who played outfield for the Cleveland Indians. Suitably impressed, my grandfather thanked me for the information. When I was 9, a pack containing 5 baseball cards cost a nickel. The other day I was in a store which displayed some cards, and feeling nostalgic, I went over to take a look. I was stunned. There are now 6 cards per pack, but the cost has skyrocketed to $1.49. That is a 2,400% per card increase in less than half a century. I've heard dozens of explanations from people with impeccable credentials regarding the reasons for the plunging SAT scores and attention spans of male students in America, but now I know all their theories are trash. The main reason for the decline isn't video games, cell phones, calculators, or junk food. It is the stratospheric price of baseball cards. I'm still angry about that. All right. For my third and final contribution of the day, we're going to read something called So Close to a Bingo. And this was published on October 2nd, 2019, in the now defunct Biddeford Journal, which I want a moment of silence for. So Close to a Bingo. Thursday evenings, some friends and I gather at our favorite local watering hole to take part in trivia night. And one of these weeks, when the trivia master asks, what do Warren, Alfred, Raymond, and Troy have in common? I'll be ready for them. Lesser teams will recognize these as 4 reasonably common male first names, but then they'll have to figure out exactly which 4 guys they are and or were. The quartet of understudies to the Beatles, perhaps? The defensive linemen who comprised the original fearsome foursome of the late 1960s Los Angeles Rams. The first 4 losing United States presidential candidates of the 20th century? Or, for out-of-the-box thinkers, maybe the official military secret code for the word wart. Wrong. 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 And wrong. Anyone from these parts knows Warren, Alfred, Raymond, and Troy are all Maine municipalities. I know this because I've recently received phone calls on my cell originating from each of these places. I have also gotten calls from Acton, Augusta, Bangor, Bar Harbor, Biddeford, Brunswick, Calais, Freeport, Gardner, Gray, Harrington, Herman, Island Falls, Kittery, Lewiston, Lincolnville Center, Portland, Rockland, Rumford, Scarborough, Skowhegan, Smyrna Mills, Stacyville, Sullivan, Waterville, Wells, and Wyndham. Unfortunately, not one of those callers from any of these far-flung exotic Pine Tree State locales has left me a message, which leads me to conclude I am either an unusually intimidating fellow or I am being besieged by telecommunication robots. Getting junk phone calls at all hours can be upsetting even when it's not an election year. Some people get pretty bent out of shape about it, but not me. First of all, I never answer the phone if the number on the screen isn't one I know, although I will respond to those who leave me a message, assuming I'm interested in the contents of their recorded information. Besides, why get upset over something unimportant when you can have fun with it? In fact, as I write this, I am in the midst of a fierce competition with several friends that's every bit as intense as Thursday night trivia. In order to win at Robocall Bingo, you have to receive calls from 5 numerically consecutive area codes. The beauty of this game, anybody can play, and the more bogus phone calls from far-off locations you get, the better your chances to emerge triumphant. Like several other deceptively easy-sounding games of chance, Robocall Bingo is tough. Luckily, Apparently, I have a great many robo-friends in some far-flung places, so I'm a serious contender. Just within the last month, I've gotten robocalls from 26 different states and 7 of the 10 Canadian provinces. I've even got a few messages. Jamie called from toll-free area code 833 to offer me help with my crushing tax debt. Emma tried twice with the car insurance rates she said I had asked about, once from Elmhurst, Illinois, area code 630, and the other time from another toll-free number at 844, although she left me a 949 Orange County, California callback number. Although both young-sounding women had friendly, melodious voices, I didn't follow up with either of them because, despite Jamie's overture, I don't have any crushing tax debt, and I hadn't requested any auto insurance figures from Emma or from anyone else either. No one I know has yet achieved robocall bingo, but I've been agonizingly close for some time now. I've got a 201, New Jersey, a 202, Washington, D.C., a 203, Connecticut, a 204, Manitoba, and a 206, Washington State. I have never wanted a phone call from Birmingham, Alabama, area code 205, than I do right now. One friend of mine thinks he's on the verge of victory since he's got a 559, Fresno, California, a 561, South Florida, a 562, Long Beach, California, a 563, Northeast Iowa, and a 564, Western Washington. I'm not worried, though, because at the moment, there is no area code 560 or 565. Another intense competitor tells me she's within one of winning since she's got a 769, Jackson, Mississippi, 770, a newer Atlanta area code, 772, Port St. Lucie, Florida, 773, Chicago vicinity, and 774, multiple communities outside of Boston. I just didn't have the heart to tell her that area code 771, which she needs, is currently unassigned. I have to admit, though, sometimes getting upwards of 10 phantom phone calls per day can get mighty irritating. If anyone reading this is a genuine telemarketer, or even worse, someone who controls all those infernal dialing robots, do me a favor, leave me alone. Unless you're from Birmingham, Alabama, then by all means, give me a ring.